Episode 93. Now you're telling me? Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of intimacy. You're here with Alisa Di Lorenzo.
And Tony Lorenzo. And I am excited because tonight we are going to talk about sexual intimacy, which is something we haven't talked about in a while.
Oh, I thought you were just laughing because you were doing like these stretching exercises before your intro and you're like pumping up your muscles or something.
My big gains.
Is that what you're calling it these days?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Well, Tony's starting to train for this fitness or physique competition. And so I have to laugh because he comes to the table every night with like...
Not every night.
Okay, most nights. With a large stainless steel bowl full of all kinds of vegetables and his protein. And the first night he did it, I just looked over and I'm like, honey, is it feeding time at the zoo? Because any of you that have gone to the zoo when they do feeding time, you know, animals have these big stainless steel bowls and they put all the fruits and vegetables in there and it's full and, you know, they go in and the animals devour it. Well, that's what it looks like in my house at dinner time.
And here's something I want to say to all of you out there. I went from about 155 when I was at my lowest, when I was into my hardcore cycling, to I am now weighing in at about 172, 173-ish. And I will have to say the last, I don't know, handful of weeks, maybe not a handful, but maybe the last 2 to 3 weeks, when I am making love to Alisa, there is one thing that I get out of her now. I mean, she will look at me and she'll be like, dang, your arms are bigger than your chest. It's like,
it's
wow.
noticeable. It's noticeable.
I got to say, I dig that. Hey, you know what? Call me vain. I'm working on a body that God gave me, and if my wife digs it, it gets me all the more riled up to know that.
Yeah, it is pretty funny because when he first told me he was doing this, he started showing me some pictures of these guys. Some of them are younger that he's going to be.
Most of them were younger.
So most of the pictures they showed me were guys that were younger, and they're...
Let's just put it this way. I will be competing in the Masters 35 plus division. Most of the guys that I'm looking at...
That makes you sound so old when they stick the Masters in front of it. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Many of the guys I'm looking at because I want to just figure out, okay, what do I need to gain to get to where they are? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about guys that are like 24 to 30-ish.
Okay. They were big. I mean, these guys, you know, very big. Defined. Big. They were just a lot bigger than you have ever been.
Right.
And I remember looking at these guys going, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not necessarily, I don't know. But I will say, you know, partly because Tony's not all the physical activity, but most of the physical activity Tony has done in our marriage has revolved around cycling. So he's always had these.
Or endurance sports.
Right. So we're not really bulking up any, you know, like muscles. You know, you've never been like bodybuilding or upper body. It's always been your legs.
Right. Because of the endurance.
And I have to say, I'm incredibly vain about your legs too, because you have great legs and, you know, people joke about the fact that you shave your legs. And I'm like, you know what? I like his legs shaved. I can't imagine them
all hairy. Because you've got great legs. Hairy would just hide them. And so now he's working on the upper body thing. And I'm actually very surprised, but I'm digging it. His, you know, arms and shoulders are getting a lot bigger. His chest is getting bigger. And, you know, he looks good. It's surprising me that I'm enjoying this process. I thought you looked good before, but you definitely, you know. I'm filling out more. I'm looking healthy.
Yeah.
Overall.
Just balanced.
Yeah. So anyways, that's been fun. It's causing a lot of hiccups for me at times, though, because I am tired. I've just been tired lately, period. I do not know why. This weekend, Alisa was away on a women's retreat. And when I have the kids, for some reason, I sleep well anyways. I don't hear her much. So Friday night, all the kids slept in on Saturday. I slept in. It was like 9 hours of sleep.
Are you kidding me? The kids slept in?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And then last night, so Saturday night, you know, Abby came in earlier this morning, about 6:30ish, to start bothering us. But we didn't really move out of bed until about 7:30, which was still a good 8 hours of sleeping for me. So it was nice. And I know you had a good time with all your girls up there.
It was an amazing time, and we'll talk about it
But Alisa did talk.
I did speak.
So,
and the topic of the women's retreat, it was called Loss and Found. And so there were 6 of us speakers talking about various loss that we've experienced in our life and where we found God through that, and what have been the blessings
because of them,
because of that storm, because of that loss. And just briefly on that, it was one of those things when I was invited to speak, when I opened the letter and read the invitation, I instantly knew that I was being called to speak about Andrew's death. And it was, one of those things that I actually wrestled with, because obviously I've shared with all of you, those of you that have listened to that podcast where we talk about it in depth. I know that's been... Which is number 4. Is it 4? So I've shared it. I've shared it one-on-one with a lot of women. I've shared it on the podcast, which we know that's actually one of the most popular or most downloaded podcasts. But this was the first time sharing in front of a live audience, and there were 60 women there. And I realized a number of things preparing for that. One is how many blessings have come out of Andrew's life. Not just Abby, who was the prayed for child after Andrew, but the fact that I have been able to speak to so many, the fact that One Extraordinary Marriage became a platform where we could reach so many to talk about child loss, and the fact that one even happened, because the statistics say that between 20 and 40% of all couples that experience child loss end up in divorce because they can't find their way out of that dark hole
at any stage, right?
And so, I was sitting there, preparing this talk and realizing, oh my gosh, not only did we buck the odds, but we've gone so far as to develop this ministry that helps other couples deal with the day-to-day marriage stuff. And all of that happened after Andrew. And it's got his fingerprints all over it. And felt incredibly blessed to be able to share the story. It was a phenomenal weekend, and we will definitely talk more about some of the things that came out of the weekend, just observations and whatnot. But, Tony and I had a conversation earlier this week, and so he definitely wants to talk about sex tonight. Plus, I've been gone for 3 days, and so, you know what's on his mind.
I just want to bring up one thing, too. Since the death of Andrew, that's been 6 years now.
Almost 7. It'll be 7 in December.
It'll be 7 in December. So realize if you're going through a difficult time right now in your marriage, it could possibly be because of a death of a child. It could be financial woes. It could be depression. It could be you're losing your house. I mean, there's a number of things that could be hindering your marriage. Realize it takes time. It does take time to come out of it. And if you force yourself that there's nothing else, there's no other way, I really want you to second guess yourself and think about what you're doing.
What do you mean there's no other way?
Well, when I was in that dark hole with Andrew and what was happening, it would have been very easy just to go, this is it, this is done, I'm leaving.
Okay.
And you're not going to see what God has in store for you if you just do that. Take some deep breaths, walk away from the situation.
Not the relationship.
Not the relationship, but walk away from that situation. Take a break. Go for a stroll. Talk to some trusted advisors or people around you.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with someone this weekend, and I said, you know what, if you had told me 7 years ago when I was sitting in that hospital room listening to another baby on the floor cry that my life was going to go where it's been in the last 7 years, I would have laughed in your face. I would have said there is no way that life is ever going to be good again.
Right.
Because for a period of time, that's where I was. It was dark. And, we clawed our way out. God gave us a child that was going to ask 1,000,001 questions about heaven and her brother there and why it's not fair that he got to go there first. And you know, she was going to go up to complete strangers and let them know that she's got a brother in heaven and, you know, make their jaws drop on the ground, which actually just entertains me to no end when she does that. I love when somebody that she doesn't know says, well, how many brothers or sisters do you have? And she does this really cute little smirk. And she's like, I've got Alex who's here and baby Andrew who's in heaven. And she just dares them to say something else.
Yeah.
And they're stunned.
But like you said, a lot of good has come out of it.
It's been, you know, not that I'd necessarily want to relive that experience, but I wouldn't trade his life and what we went through, because we wouldn't be where we are today at this point in our marriage with the strength that our marriage has. We would not have this podcast. This would have never happened. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe that we would have never gotten to this point to where we're not counseling, but sharing with other couples had we not been in such a valley that we had to come up out of.
Right. And to transition, though, into our sexual intimacy, which is...
Let's see how he does the segue here.
Which is what we're talking about this week, is sexual intimacy. The oral sex that Alisa and I have had recently in our recent past is a testament to that. Would you say? I mean, we've come out of those difficult times, have engaged each other, right?
Yeah.
In all forms of intimacy, mm-hmm. which has allowed us to have a very heightened, a very enjoyable, a very just intense sexual intimacy.
Yes. Yes. I mean, the sex is better now than it's ever been.
Right.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And the reason I bring up the oral stuff is because this past week, it was interesting. And Alisa and I have talked about this before, that we do enjoy me performing on Alisa much more than vice versa. Right. It's what it is. I live with that. There are times when I'm aggravated by it, but I speak up. I talk, and I let Alisa know that. But I'm just talking to the guys here. I don't ever let that bother me completely. You know, it's not something I dwell on and just be like, my goodness, Lisa, why don't you do this? Right.
You bring it to my attention because it's not something I particularly enjoy.
Yeah.
And Tony knows that. We've discussed it. I'm not opposed to doing it. I just don't particularly enjoy it. So it's not my first like, ooh, let's do this, honey. Every once in a while I will do that, but it's like a blue moon type of thing. And totally lost my train of thought here.
I don't know. We're talking about oral sex.
Yeah.
Not enjoying it.
Not enjoying it. Oh, I know where I was going as far as letting it bother you. But I'm not, I don't take it personally when he brings it up and says, hey, you know, I wouldn't mind if you took care of this for me. And I'm like, okay, you know what? All right, if you bring it up, it's fine, because he's not letting it get to the point where he's like, good grief, lady, would you please? You know, could you do something for the man? You know, and I appreciate that we're at a point in time in our communication where he's just like, honey, you know, it'd be nice. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big deal, that in your relationship, if there are things that you enjoy, he never forces me to perform oral sex. And I want to be very, very clear about that. When he mentions that he would like it and I choose to do it, I am not being forced. He's not holding it over my head that I don't.
Yeah, and if she chooses not to that evening or that day, it's a done deal. It's not something I would bring up, you know,
over and over
again until the next time we have sex. You know, this isn't something that I hold over her and lord over her and be like, my goodness, what, you couldn't just do this one. No, it's just, you know what? I would enjoy that. If she does it, it's cool. If not, I personally just move on. There's much more enjoyment. We have enjoyment anyways. And so to bring that up is really degrading the relationship. And so to me, it's not worth it. Mm-hmm. So if you are the type of person who's doing that, you need to think twice, because it's usually the problem is that it's not happening, and then you're bringing it up over and over again. Your spouse gets sick and tired of hearing it, and then they just turn off completely and don't want to have sex with you or make love to you.
Well, yeah, because then you become a nag, and then they just punish you by not doing whatever it is that you're asking for.
So anyways, we were this week twice, both times on our intimacy lifestyle days. Mm-hmm. Both times. One night, obviously, Alisa had to take the lead, and I did. We'll talk about that. But both nights we had oral sex, and it was very interesting because this is something that I think a lot of couples don't feel comfortable with. It's not something that many couples will talk to you about at all.
And some of you may have already turned us off once you figured out that we were talking about tonight.
Yeah, and that's okay. But you know what? It is something that over the 15 years that Alisa and I have been married, we have done. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, early on, it was horrible. It both ways, it was horrible. It didn't understand it. Probably did. For me, as a guy, I didn't understand the clitoris, the G-spot, what's what, how to entice it, how to do something with it.
Okay, I'm just laughing because the whole clitoris thing, going back to the Shirley Valentine, like I can see Shirley Valentine, what we talked about last week, and I'm, okay, sorry. It was just, okay, go ahead.
So,
Female anatomy.
But also, mention the book that you read some years back.
Oh my gosh, there's this amazing book, and
we'll link up to it.
It's called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. And, it's a book that an acupuncturist recommended to me. I was not trying to get pregnant or not get pregnant. It was just, although there's much information in the book about charting, your basal temperature and all that kind of stuff. But what it really helped me understand was all of the physical changes that your body, females, go through during their cycle. And so it gave me revelation into, mucus discharge when you're getting close to ovulation and why that happens, and why, sometimes during the month you have higher levels of arousal based on what your hormones are doing, and, just all of the physical changes. And that really helped Tony and I understand how to relate to one another during my cycle. Because let's face it, ladies, at different points in time, you have different levels of sexual arousal.
Right, but also for you, there are just certain times of the month where oral sex really is not.
Yeah, there's times I'm like
desirable.
No, not interested, and other times where I'm like, bring it on.
Right, and we just had that week.
Yes, that's where we are in the cycle. But it's important to know that as a couple, and it's important to be able to say, you know what, not tonight, honey. Like don't go down there. I'm not interested. And not have Tony take that as a personal, like, are you rejecting me? Because we've talked about it so much, it's like, no. He just like, all right, well, I'm not, we'll do something else. But what he's really getting at, and where the title comes from tonight, now you're telling me, as we were sitting in bed, was it after? No, it was not. Oh, it was after?
Yeah, it was after. It was. I think it was the first
night. And so we get to talking about oral sex. And, we've been married 15 years. We've been together 17. And I said, well, can I tell you something? And he's looking at me like, oh, what? I said, well, can I tell you something about an ex? Okay, how many years has it been since I had an ex-boyfriend? I mean, a gazillion almost.
18, 19.
Okay, he is keeping track. So I explained to him that I had had oral sex with this ex-boyfriend, and it was horrendous. I was just like, what is the point of this? Like, why in the world, why do people do this? It was so not enjoyable that I was completely baffled why on earth it had such a big, talking about. And so we're sitting there, and he's like, oh my gosh. He goes, well, that explains, probably the first 10 years of our marriage. And we had never we don't really talk about our exes that much. I visually know who Tony's last girlfriend was before me because he was dating her when we met. But it's not like they have contact, you do have contact with Sarah, but she is a friend from, I'm friends with her. There's nothing there that, and I have no contact with any of my ex-boyfriends. I'm not even friends with them on Facebook. We've talked about the boundaries. That's a boundary that I don't cross. But this whole oral sex conversation came out of the fact that we had never discussed oral sex in that way of saying, what's been your experience besides me? And yes, that does mean that we had sex with other people before having sex with one another.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
But in case you're trying to put all the numbers together, that's what that means. But having that conversation was an aha moment 15 years into our marriage.
Yeah, it really was. I was sort of taken aback because for myself, really over the last and I keep saying handful of years, but it's not. It's actually in the last 2 to 3 years, maybe, the oral sex has really gotten heightened in our lovemaking. And to the point of, I can just sense this growing desire within Alisa. To me as a husband, it's awesome to be able to do this for her. I really do. It's sort of like, wow, I am giving her this gift. And I enjoy it as well. But as we were lying there and she brought this up to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, why had we not talked about this sooner? What was stopping us from talking about it? And I think what we said early in the podcast was that you don't find many people talking about this. And because you don't find many couples out there, even those prominently out there talking about marriage and how to keep your marriage together and how to, enhance your marriage, they don't talk about oral sex. They may talk about sex a little bit, but they won't dive into the oral sex region of this. And it really got me to go, you know what? There are probably people out there just like us, maybe, same area, been married as long as us, maybe younger, maybe older, but you never had the conversations.
Right.
And if you don't have these conversations, then you're not going to know what your spouse enjoys or why not. See, if I would have known years and years ago that Alisa had a bad experience with this, with oral sex, I would have been able to talk to her more about it and not have this shroud in mystery.
Well, and I think part of it too, and it was one of the things the ladies and I talked about a lot about this weekend, is that sometimes it's just a matter of timing. I don't know years ago that we had the communication skills to be able to have that conversation and not have it be, what do you mean? What did you do with an ex? And have it be more of an accusatory, like, why are you telling me this? I don't want to know what you did with your ex-boyfriend. And we're at a point in time in our marriage where that's no threat. We're on such solid ground right now that to bring that up is not the whole like, oh, you did what?
Right.
And so I think part of it's timing. I think part of it's, going through our 60 days, what we've been through for the last couple of years, just working on making the intimacy a priority our communication skills, and I think you'd agree with me 100%. We are light years away from where we were in the early years of our marriage.
Oh, yeah.
We have conversations now.
Yeah.
Besides, what do you want to have for dinner? Or are we going out with the friends on Friday night? Or, what are we watching on TV? Don't bring up the dinner thing. Don't go there. I know you only had 3 choices. It was a short conversation.
No. I'm saying now, though, the difference, though, now is when you have little munchkins that are constantly interrupting when we are trying to have a conversation. Yeah. That does get old and annoying and does get frustrating.
Right, but when we...
And it's not like we're talking about our sexual intimacy when the kids are around, but when we are trying to have other types of conversation...
The day-to-day stuff.
It does get a little hard, as many of you know.
Yes. And, so you have to make time to have those conversations. We were lying in bed. And I don't know what prompted me. I honestly don't know why this week of all weeks I just said, you know what? I got to tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I even asked him, I'm like, okay, it's about an ex. Do you want to hear about it? Yeah, and he could have said no, and I would have been like, oh, okay.
Well, then I opened up with you on my little fantasy thingy.
Oh, yeah. So okay, you guys know I love to shop at the thrift stores and the consignment shops, right? And so I found this pair of boots, great pair of boots, and I bring them
all for
$10. Nice. And, you know, nice heels, you know, beautiful. They were great boots. They are great boots. Knee-high. And so I bring them home, and I'm wearing them, and Tony's like, wow. Those would be really good with nothing else on. And I just looked at him.
That's my little hint.
Yeah, it's subtle, isn't he? You know, like, in case you were wondering. So, you know, my nights to initiate come up, and I'm like, okay, I so don't get the like heels and nothing else thing, but he has turned into the shoe man who loves heels and just has, and I've never done this before, but he's working on the computer.
You didn't go to the shoe man. What was that?
Oh, well, just the fact that you love shoes now. I'm like, my heels, you're just,
yeah,
you know.
well, yeah, it's not any shoe.
No, it's heels.
Yeah.
It's heels. I've got a pair of black sandals that I, you know, even though they're not in the least bit, well, okay, they're a little bit comfortable, but not for a very long period of time.
Which ones?
The black ones. The ones that you love.
Oh, yes, the black ones.
The black ones. I can't get rid of them because he loves those shoes.
You try to get rid of them.
I did, and yeah.
I nixed that one. I'm like, no.
The thing is, I enjoy wearing heels because I already have long legs, and so I get the extra, 2 or 3 inches, and it's just legs from here to there. But, so he's working on the computer Thursday night, and I'm like, okay, it's my night to initiate. So I come in, light the candles.
Light the candles. He's still on the computer. I keep thinking he's going to walk in. Nope, he doesn't walk in. I put the boots on, take everything else off, and he still hasn't come in. So I'm like, okay, seriously? I don't want to like walk down the hallway because now I've got the boots on. And so, it's going to ruin my setup Your cover up there.
Yeah. So, thank goodness for the smartphones. And yes, you did hear me say this because I went and sent him a message on Facebook. Hey, I think it's time for you to come to bed. And then there no response. So I sent him an email. Are you coming to bed? Like, can you come in here? So he walks in.
Oh, and that's my
that's your.
Oh.
Did you forget how this podcast works? We go back and forth.
Yeah.
And that was kind of your setup. Like I've set the scene.
Yeah. So I walk in, and lo and behold, Elisa's wearing these awesome boots, and she just looked lovely, as always. And it was just, I gotta say, for me, again, it's not something Elisa's gonna do every night. I mean,
no.
the funny thing is that we get done and we have another enjoyable evening of oral sex, and I look at her and I go, that was pretty uncomfortable for you, right?
And it was because, so I've got these heels on, and like all I can think about is either I'm going to like kick him or scratch him or do something with the,
And here's my thing is so what?
Or I'm going to like put a hole in the comforter. I was like really trying to stay in the moment, but I had all of these like, careful what you're doing with your feet because you got these boots on, with 2-inch heels, and so.
Yeah, we'll keep working on that though.
Okay.
I think that's the key. The more, the better. So it just flushes.
Kind of like Abby's teacher last year said, the more you do, the better you become at that.
Exactly.
There you go.
And I think that's what we'll just have to work through.
But part of that for me last week was to say, this is something he would enjoy. So he's told me. I'm still not
visual.
It's a visual thing.
Men visual.
And I just said, you know what? It's my night to take the lead. If that's what he wants to see me, it's not like he's asking me to, do something completely off the wall. And I mean, you guys know whether we're talking about oral sex or getting dressed up in something or doing whatever, we have always said, you go to the level of the of the most conservative person in your relationship.
Right.
And, so I took it to a level that I was comfortable. It's the same thing with oral sex. We take it to a level that we're comfortable. It's why if I say no to Tony, there's no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be the same guidelines for your marriage. If your spouse is not comfortable with oral sex, don't force the issue. You can revisit it at different times, but not every single time you're trying to have, make love. Don't do it. You'll be a nag.
Yeah.
But talk about it when you're not in the middle of making love. Talk about it when you're on date night. Talk about it when you're laying in bed before you go to sleep. Have the conversations like Tony and I did this week. Where he's just like, wait, we've been married 15 years and I'm just finding out about that. That's where that came from. Now you're telling me? Because when you've created a safe place in your relationship, and it's taken us a while, you guys know we've been through a lot of crap. But we are in a place where I can say, you know what, I did this with an ex.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't so good. You've definitely, you've raised the bar. A lot. There wasn't even a bar before, so.
Yeah.
But, be willing to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the one hearing the conversation, just be open to what you're hearing. You don't have to agree. You don't have to go along with, but listen. Because just the truly listening validates your spouse. Tony could have been like, I don't really want to hear about it. Okay. If he doesn't want to hear about it, I'm not going to force it.
Right.
And
I will have to say, for all you women out there, pick up this book, and I'll have a link in the show notes here on taking charge of your fertility. Really, I saw a huge impact that this book had on Alisa and understanding her cycle and why there were times in the month when she had more sexual desire and why she had less sexual desire. And as a husband, wow, does that make a difference to know? Because now I can understand when she comes up to me and she goes, well, I'm at this point in my cycle. Yes, I still want to make love to you, but no, I really don't want oral sex. Let's just have quickies.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to me now. It's not she isn't rejecting me personally. It's just where she is. We understand that. We have our commitment to each other to stick with our intimacy lifestyle, which is our 2 times a week. I'm initiating 1 of 3 days. She is initiating 1 of 3 days. We got a day off. So it really helped me to understand, okay, there are times during this month, this 30-day period or window, when I know she really will enjoy oral sex.
Right.
I enjoy performing that. So for me to know that period of time it just works hand in hand, because then I can go, okay, that's when I will make sure to do that. Other times of the month when it isn't, it's not that I feel rejected or that she's pushing me away or anything like that. I don't have that feeling. Every once in a while I will say it still comes up because I may go for it and she's like, no, just do it quick. And in my mind I'm going, no, really I don't want to. But then once she'll say, it's just sort of like, it's this time of the month, I release it.
Mm-hmm.
I go, oh, okay.
And, once again, it boils down to communication. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was reading this book going, hey, listen to this. Listen to what my body's doing. And, part of that's just the relationship that Tony and I have. I mean, he probably knows more than a lot of husbands do about my cycle. I will be I don't know how many women, because that's not really something we women talk about, is how
I don't know. Comment. Let us know, because maybe we're just in some bubble, and others of you don't. But it would be something that I would recommend to all of you out there to talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And for you guys out there who are like, wow, that's the girl thing, rah, 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 and trying to be all ego and your manly man side coming out. Get off your soapbox, step off of it for a little bit. Your wife will really appreciate you.
Well, because the fact of the matter is that her cycle impacts your marriage.
And it impacts you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tony knows pretty much. I mean, he is so in tune to where I am in my cycle that sometimes he tells me, aren't you supposed to start like in a couple of days? Because
I'm also gauging, again, intimacy lifestyle. I'm gauging.
Absolutely.
I'm going, okay, can
Absolutely.
I get another day in
But
here before?
And that's part of why we're so open about it. And partly because I know that my cycle impacts our relationship. It impacts it from when I get my chocolate and sugar cravings. Dude, you better have the chocolate in the house. Don't eat the last of my chocolate.
Yeah, last time I think the bag was open and it got spilled all over the floor and you were pissed off.
I was, because somebody opened my bag of chocolate and I went to go grab it out of the thing and I did not know it was open. Chocolate chips all over the floor. Mad mommy. To things where, sorry, don't mess with the chocolate. Knowing, the closer I get to ovulation, I'm like game for anything. I'm much more, and that's a physiological thing that we women are wired for, because our bodies are, preparing to get pregnant. We're, releasing those pheromones. We're doing all of that stuff. The mucus is there to hold the sperm. I mean, it's all.
So use protection or some sort of.
Yes, we do not take responsibility for any babies born as a result of listening to the show.
Amen.
But
no responsibility.
I take no responsibility if you do not use birth control.
You're adults. Use birth control.
Or whatever natural family planning. But knowing and understanding, using that book to understand my cycle, to understand why I desire different things at different parts of the month, that is huge. And I am not alone, because I know, half of you out there are women. It's not stuff they teach in sex ed. It's not stuff they teach in your health classes growing up. Some of the stuff I read in this book, I had never heard presented before. And I probably read it when I was 34, 35.
I was going to say somewhere in your
mid-30s.
Mid-30s.
And I, total epiphany on this stuff. And I'm thinking, why didn't they teach, why didn't a gynecologist tell me some of this stuff, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
So it impacts everything from oral sex to how you feel about your spouse. I mean, just the whole thing.
Yeah, it totally does. No. And I would just say for this one is, oral sex is fun.
It is.
I enjoyed it. Alisa enjoys it. It has taken time. And that's what I want you guys to know in here, is that sometimes it takes time to meld when it comes to your sexual intimacy. All forms of it. Not just, it could be just your intercourse. I mean, you may just be off right now and you're not connecting, either he or she, you just aren't feeling it, and I understand you want that deep connection, because there was a point in time in our marriage when there was really no connection. It was just a physical act. I understand that. Mm-hmm. And I know you want more. You want that emotional connection too, where both of your bodies become one. I mean, it truly is God just taking both of you together and connecting you.
Absolutely. And
there's just this charge, this energy that just binds the two of you together. And that takes some working through. Mm-hmm. It takes talking and learning about each other. And we're here to say that it can happen. Mm-hmm. It can really happen in your marriage. And with that, we're going to end tonight with an amazing email that we got from Kevin and Tammy.
Yeah.
Do you have it up?
I do.
Okay, go for it, please.
Hi, Tony and Alisa. I just wanted to give you an update on Kevin and my 60 Days of Sex Challenge, and just want to say we did it. We ended up doing 47 out of 60. Though it may not have been the full 60, I consider it a huge success, since honestly in the past we were lucky if we did it 3 to 4 times a month. And considering we knew we weren't going to do it during my period, and the fact that we did this during our county fair time, which we are both involved in some capacity, I consider this truly a huge, huge success. We are still trying to iron out our intimacy lifestyle and trying to figure out what will work best for us yet. So far, we are just going to keep doing what we are doing until God reveals to us which direction we should go next. The change in our marriage, we couldn't have done it without you both. Thank you again for your ministry. Though you may not see the monetary blessings from one, I know that the blessings you will receive in other ways will be far, far greater. Again, my husband and I thank you for the amazing things you have done just in our marriage alone. You have helped us in more ways than you'll ever know. I just got done listening to podcast number 75 last night, and I must say kudos to both of you for approaching this very tough subject. I don't think there's a marriage out there today that hasn't thought of the D word at least once or twice. As I told you in my last letter, my husband and I just celebrated our 22nd anniversary in September.
Hey, and wait a minute. 22 years, folks, and they just completed 47 out of 60 days. Big time kudos to them. So any of you guys younger, you know what you got in store.
They've set the bar.
Yeah, I mean, 22 years.
7 more than us.
7 more than us.
We'd still have kids at home in 7 years.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, for those of you out there going, oh, we could never do this or this, that, we're too old, we're too young, whatever. Look what these guys have done.
They made it a priority.
Yep, keep listening.
Let's see. And congrats to both of you on your 15th and vow renewal. Very cool. We hope to do that for our 25th. I would be lying if I said I never thought about divorce. Over 22 years of marriage, we have gone through some really, really tough times. About 4 to 5 years ago, we were really struggling, and I wasn't sure if we were going to make it. I wasn't sure working at it was really worth it anymore. But now that is different, and I'm so glad those dark days are behind us. It's exactly what Tony was talking about early on. Sometimes you just have to push through.
Yep.
But marriage is hard. It's not the Cinderella story. It is the better and the worse. I can't remember if it was podcast 75 or one previous where the woman with the 9-month-old wrote to you about her not wanting to give her husband sex if she wasn't going to get what she wanted out of it, and that it was something else she had to schedule in on her day. Though I was never that harsh and demanding about getting what I wanted out of it, I was one of those women who thought that sex was just something more to add to my already overloaded to-do list.
Do we have Sarah's email? Because she emailed too.
Can you?
I will find
you
Sarah's.
Look that up while I'm going through here.
Because the one that Tammy
is referencing, we got an email.
We got a really cool email from her this past week too. Okay, go. Sorry.
She said, and I loved your advice of her needing to take the initiative and make it work than her more or less demanding him to fix it. I was also that girl. He needed to fix it. Thing is, in all honesty, he knew about as much about fixing it as I did. It wasn't until I listened to your podcast, prayed a huge amount with, yes, equal amounts of listening this time, because telling God your problems and throwing them in his lap is not going to get you answers, but listening to what God has to say is key. And then I took the initiative, which, by the way, after I prayed, that's what God pretty much told me I needed to do. He told me that I needed to take the initiative and step up and change it, even if my feeling felt otherwise. That I should not wait for my husband, not wait for him to serve me, but I needed to serve him, despite my feelings of thinking that I thought he didn't deserve it or maybe not be entitled to it. I needed to love him and respect him despite all that we had gone through and what was going on in our lives, and whatever it was I was blaming him for that week. And you know, that is what turned our marriage around for the better. When I started thinking of my spouse first, making him a priority, making our marriage a priority, though at the time it was a bit lackluster. When we made our intimacy a priority and started really talking again, that is when our marriage began to thrive again. Marriage is like a plant. If you don't feed it and nurture it, or if you wait for someone else to take care of it, it'll probably most likely die. Honestly, I think today's me society is a huge killer in marriage today. When we are so caught up with ourselves, our needs, and we have that those around me are obviously here for me kind of attitude, we have no room to allow anyone else in, and no one wants to be around us, including our spouse. We need to set ourselves aside and humble ourselves and be that spouse that we want our spouse to be. It's amazing when we sacrifice and do that, how in the end, it pretty much ends up that way. Thanks again for all that you do. We love you guys. Tammy.
Awesome.
Did you find Sarah's email?
I did. And Congratulations, Tammy and Kevin. Wow. I mean, you guys have been keeping us updated on this whole journey, and God bless you guys for making this happen. We are just so thrilled. And, you know, when I got that email and I wrote back to Tammy and Kevin, and the one thing that was going through me and my body at that time was tears were flowing and a chill down my back. Because to me, that is why we're here each and every night, that we podcast and share what we share. And you guys made me realize that when we were about to give up some weeks back. And it really just hit me that if we would have stopped, that may not have happened. That the transformation may have gone to a certain point, but wouldn't have gone any farther. And so, Tammy and Kevin, congratulations. You did it. I'm excited to hear about your intimacy lifestyle and how you guys make that happen. Please let us know how it goes. I mean, Alisa and I have been doing ours for 2 years, 2+ years now. So we may even have to change ours up. So give us some ideas. All right. So Sarah is who Tammy was referencing. And our first conversation from Sarah came in May 13th. And there was a conversation. Alisa read that sometime back. And there's some, you know, Alisa gave Sarah some harsh words. And
I prefer to think of it as tough love.
Tough love. Yes, that's fine. Tough love. And you know what? She even had me read it before it got sent out, because it was one of these situations where we both just felt like, wow, we could just appease her and do what everybody else does, or we could shoot from the hip and let her know truthfully and honestly what she needs to hear. And now when that happens, you guys got to understand, when we put ourselves out like that, I mean, we can get railed.
And we have,
you know, but listen to this, because this is how God works sometimes when you shoot from the hip and you take off the mask and you just go for it. Hi, Alisa. I wanted to give you an update on how things are going for my husband and me. It's been about 5 months since I wrote you last, and we're doing pretty darn good. It was tough to implement most of the suggestions I heard, but what stuck with me the most was a reminder that losing interest in sex would be interpreted as lost interest in my husband. I realized that what was turning me off of sex the most was just sheer exhaustion. So trying to take my cues from the creative solutions on your podcast, I made my husband a deal. And I love the way she's taken what we're talking about and how she's made it work for her. And that's the key. Alisa and I are just two people. We're like the stimulus. You guys got to come up with your own ideas,
figure out how it works in your relationship.
Right. We're just here to sort of get the ball rolling. Any night for a month that he let me know he wanted sex before 10 p.m., I would be ready in 10 minutes. That seemed to do the trick for both of us. He was able to see I still cared about him, and I learned I was able to enjoy sex as long as I wanted, as long as I wasn't being forced to choose between intimacy and sleep. Thank you for your advice, Sarah. So those are two awesome.
And I love that, because, you know, it's true. Some of you guys heard my reactions on the air, and I was harsh. I was, like Tony said, I shot straight from the hip, and it was tough love, because I felt pretty strongly about what she was saying in her letter to us. And I'm so excited to see how their marriage is being transformed, because she figured out it was exhaustion. It was exhaustion. And, you know, when she says in there, you know, for her, not having sex was about getting more sleep. You know, little baby in the house, not sleeping through the night, you know, all of the demands of new motherhood, it wears you down. We've
been there.
Abby still wakes up in the middle of the night. So, you know, I'm almost 6 years into this, and good grief with her anyway. I'm 9 years into motherhood. But she came up with a solution to say, you know what? I know I need my sleep, but I realize what my rejection is doing to our marriage.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited that she was able to, see those words and realize, ladies, and I am going to put the gender roles on here because most often it is the woman controlling the sex. I know some of you have told us in your marriages it's reverse. But when we reject our spouse's advances for sex, we are rejecting them. That's the way it's perceived. Whether or not it's just, I'm too tired because you're really just fatigued, or whether it's, I just don't feel like having sex. We're saying, I choose not to be close to you. Mm-hmm. And so for Sarah to realize that and come up with a solution that, some of you might be listening going, that is brilliant. I might have to bump it up to 9:00 instead of 10:00, but you know what, whatever works for you. But how exciting for her husband to hear, okay, you know what, for the next month, you let me know by 10, and at 10 minutes, you meet me in the bedroom. I can only imagine that he probably thought he died and gone to heaven.
I think it's cool. I just love the ingenuity there of them coming up with a solution that worked for them. So
Sarah, hats off to you that you guys have come a long way in the last 5 months, and,
keep at it.
Keep at it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
To hear.
Yeah. And for all of you out there, if we have impacted you in any way over the last 93 episodes, please consider being a monthly contributor. You can go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com, and on the right-hand side, you can contribute as little as $3 a month. And that just helps for us for hosting and other little things that we have going on here. It's not a big operation we run, but we do appreciate it. And for those that have contributed, thank you and God bless you for serving. We truly do appreciate that. And with that, you guys, we love you. We hope you have a fantastic week. Please comment. Let us know what you think. Call us, 858-876-5663. We would love to play some of your questions and your comments on the air here with us. Again, we love you, and take care, and God bless.